The silence before the noise the world often sees what it wants to see. When cameras flash and headlines run wild, people forget that behind every face is a soul trying to stay kind, even when misunderstood. This is where Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock found themselves, trapped between truth and rumor, between quiet friendship and the loud whispers of the world. It started one late evening on a movie set years ago. The crew had wrapped up a long day of filming and everyone was tired. The air smelled like rain, and the lights of Lowe's Angels glowed softly in the distance. Sandra sat quietly on a metal chair, still wearing her costume, staring into the night sky. She looked peaceful, but inside she felt empty. She had just received news that one of her oldest friends from college had passed away, and though she wanted to hide her pain, Keanu noticed. He walked toward her slowly, holding 2 cups of hot tea. He didn't say anything dramatic. He just sat beside her and placed 1 cup next to her hand. "You don't have to talk," he said softly. "Just sit." That small act of kindness began something beautiful, not a romance like the world would later believe, but a quiet connection built on understanding, respect, and care. They didn't talk much that night. The rain started to fall gently, and both sat under a small umbrella someone had left behind. There was no noise, no script, no spotlight. Just two souls finding calm in silence. Months passed. Their friendship grew in ways that people around them couldn't easily define. They laughed on set, helped each other through lines, and often left small notes of encouragement in each other's trailers. One day, when Sandra forgot to eat lunch during a busy shooting schedule, she found a note and a small lunchbox waiting for her. It said, "For the star who forgets to shine for herself, eat." She smiled when she saw the handwriting. It was Keanu's, but Hollywood doesn't like quiet things. Silence doesn't sell. One morning, as Sandra was driving to the set, her phone buzzed endlessly. Gossip columns were filled with headlines. Keanu and Sandra's secret love, hidden nights, private dinners, is it more than friendship? She froze for a moment, feeling the sting of words she never said, stories she never told. The reporters followed her car, cameras flashing through tinted windows. The peaceful friendship that once felt pure now stood under a storm of curiosity. That evening, Keanu called her. His voice was calm but heavy. "They don't know us," he said. "Let them talk, we'll stay kind." She didn't answer right away. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "But kindness feels small when the world is shouting." Keanu paused. "Then we'll be small together." From that day on, they made a quiet promise to live with truth, even if no one believed it, to choose peace over proof, and to let time show what words could not. What people didn't see was how that choice changed both of them. They began using their fame not to fight rumors, but to help others. Sandra started supporting small children's hospitals quietly, under no headlines. Keanu began visiting cancer wards late at night, always avoiding cameras. Sometimes they went together, bringing laughter to those who had forgotten how to smile. The rumors didn't stop. In fact, they grew louder. Magazines wrote fake stories, tabloids invented drama, and even fans began to guess their relationship. Yet neither Keanu nor Sandra ever corrected them publicly. Instead, they focused on what mattered, being there for people who needed real kindness, not stories. The world saw mystery. They were living truth. But something unexpected was about to happen, an accident that would test everything they stood for. An accident that would show the world the difference between gossip and grace. Because sometimes, kindness shines brightest when life turns dark. When silence turned into noise, the next morning started like any other. The sun slowly rose over Lowe's Angels, painting soft gold on the city's glass towers. Sandra Bullock was on her way to a charity event organized by a children's hospital, while Keanu was heading to his motorcycle workshop, one of the few places where he could breathe freely, away from flashing cameras and endless attention. Their worlds, calm and ordinary, were about to collide with something neither of them saw coming. Around mid-morning, Sandra's phone rang. It was her assistant, voice shaking. "Sandra, there's been an accident." "It's Keanu." Her hands froze on the steering wheel. Her heartbeat quickened. She didn't ask how or where. She just turned her car around and started driving, her thoughts spinning faster than the wheels beneath her. Keanu had been hit by a delivery truck while trying to help a man whose car had broken down on the roadside. The impact wasn't fatal, but serious enough to put him in the hospital with injuries to his shoulder and leg. Reporters had already gathered outside before Sandra arrived. Cameras flashed like lightning. Questions flew through the air. "Are you here to see Keanu Reeves? Are the rumors true now? Is this love or guilt?" Sandra didn't answer a single question. She just kept walking, eyes forward, silent but fierce. Inside the hospital, the quiet was deafening. Machines beeped softly, footsteps echoed down the white hallway, and the faint smell of antiseptic filled the air. When she reached Keanu's room, he was lying there, half-conscious but calm. A small smile appeared when he saw her. "You're here," he whispered. She nodded, tears threatening to fall. "Of course I am." He tried to move his arm, but pain stopped him. "I'm fine, it could have been worse." She shook her head. "You could have died, Keanu. You stopped to help a stranger in traffic, and now you're lying here. How can you always think of others first?" He smiled weakly. "Because someone once told me that kindness is the only thing that never breaks, even when people do." She sat beside him, taking his hand gently. "You can't keep doing this. You give so much, and the world gives you pain back." "It's okay," he said softly. "Pain reminds me that I'm still human." For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, reporters continued shouting, trying to turn this moment of quiet humanity into a story of scandal. By evening, photos of Sandra sitting beside Keanu's bed flooded the internet. Captions twisted their emotions into drama. "Secret love revealed." "Intimate moments behind hospital doors." Sandra's team advised her to leave before the situation worsened, but she refused. "I'm not leaving him for the sake of a headline," she said firmly. "I'm leaving when he's able to walk again." And she kept her word. For weeks, she visited Keanu daily, bringing books, homemade food, and stories to keep his spirit alive. Sometimes they laughed over old memories. Sometimes they just sat in silence, listening to the hum of hospital life around them. During those quiet days, Keanu's kindness began to ripple beyond the hospital walls. A nurse later shared how he asked her about her family every day, how he gave part of his charity fund to help another patient's surgery, how he thanked every cleaner personally. But the world outside didn't see that. It only saw what could sell. Rumors grew like wildfire. Talk shows debated their relationship. Fans speculated endlessly. People forgot that behind every picture was a story deeper than gossip could ever touch. Sandra felt the pressure crushing her. One night, she broke down. Sitting in her car outside the hospital, she cried quietly, whispering to herself, "Why does goodness always get turned into gossip?" And then she looked up at the hospital window, where a single light was still on Keanu's room. She wiped her tears and smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why we need to keep being good," she whispered, "because the world needs to remember what it looks like." Days turned into weeks, and slowly Keanu began to recover. The scars would heal, but something inside both of them had changed. They had faced noise, judgment, and cruelty, and yet their silence had remained pure. But life, as it often does, was not done testing them. A new challenge was waiting, not about rumors, not about pain, but about choice. Because soon, an offer from a major film studio would come, one that would tempt them both to break their quiet promise and return to the world that had hurt them before. And the question was, would kindness survive fame one more time? The return to the spotlight when Keanu finally walked out of the hospital, the sky was painted with soft orange light. The city that once felt noisy and cruel now looked calm, almost forgiving. Sandra walked beside him, quietly watching his slow steps. Every limp carried both pain and strength, and she admired how he never complained once. As they stepped outside, flashes exploded again. Cameras clicked, reporters shouted. It was as if the world had been waiting for this exact moment, the return of Keanu Reeves, the man everyone wanted to turn into a headline. Sandra gently placed her hand on his arm. "Ignore them," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "I stopped listening a long time ago." They entered a waiting car, and for a moment the chaos outside faded into silence. Sandra looked out the window at the blur of lights. "It's strange," she said softly, "how the world watches but never really sees." Keanu nodded. "People love stories even if they're not true. Maybe that's why we have to tell the real ones." He didn't know it then, but those words would soon become the reason for their next decision, one that would test not only their patience but their purpose. A few weeks later, they both received an unexpected offer from a major Hollywood studio. The director wanted them to star together again, a reunion film that would reignite old on-screen magic. The project promised prestige, money, and global attention. It also promised to feed the gossip they had worked so hard to silence. Sandra hesitated. "If we do this," she said, "people will talk again, they'll twist it into something it's not." Keanu looked thoughtful. "Then maybe we show them what it really is. Kindness doesn't hide, it just speaks softly." The film, titled Quiet Hearts, was a story about two people who meet again after tragedy, learning to trust and forgive. The script felt close to their own lives, too close, in fact. Both knew that stepping back into that world meant walking once again into the fire. But deep down, they also knew something else. Stories had power, and if they could use their art to show compassion instead of chaos, maybe it would be worth it. So they said yes. The first day on set was filled with mixed emotions. Everyone watched them closely, the cast, the crew, the press outside the gates. Sandra felt the pressure in every glance, every whispered conversation. Keanu, as always, stayed calm. He greeted every crew member with a smile, carried his own coffee cup, and often helped lift equipment when no one expected him to. But the real moment came during one particular scene. It was late evening, the set quiet except for the soft hum of cameras. The director asked them to film a dialogue where both characters open up about the pain of being misunderstood. When the cameras rolled, something shifted. Keanu's voice trembled with real emotion. Sandra's eyes filled with tears that weren't part of the script. For a few minutes, it wasn't acting anymore, it was truth. When the director called cut, no one spoke. Everyone on set felt it, that rare moment when art touches real life. But once again, the outside world didn't see it that way. Leaked photos from the scene went viral overnight. Headlines screamed, real feelings exposed, Keanu and Sandra caught an emotional confession, romance reborn on camera. It hurt. Not because of the lies, but because no one cared about the truth behind them, two friends using art to heal, not to pretend. Sandra sat alone in her trailer that night, scrolling through endless online posts. She felt the weight of misunderstanding pressing against her heart. A quiet knock came at the door. Keanu entered with 2 mugs of coffee just like he had years ago. "I brought calm," he said softly. She smiled sadly. "It's happening again," he nodded, "and it will happen again after this. But what matters is what we do with it." She looked at him. "And what do? We keep being good," he said simply. "We keep showing kindness until it's louder than the noise." And so they did. They continued filming, day after day, turning every scene into something honest. Slowly, even the crew began to see them differently. Behind every camera lens, people realized what real friendship looked like: quiet, loyal, without expectations. When the movie finally wrapped, the studio arranged a press conference. It was packed with journalists eager for drama. But instead, they got something else. Sandra took the microphone first. Her voice was calm but clear. "We came together for a story about forgiveness and respect," she said. "If people want to call that love, that's fine. Because love isn't always romantic. Sometimes it's just the way someone makes you feel safe." Then Keanu added, "The world talks a lot about what's real and what's not. Maybe the truth is simple. Real things don't need to be explained." The room went silent. For once, the headlines had no words. But even as they walked off that stage, hand in hand like old friends, neither knew that a much deeper storm was forming, one that would force both of them to make a painful choice between peace and pride. Because kindness can heal the world, but sometimes the world doesn't want to be healed. The storm behind the curtain the next few weeks after the press conference were quiet, too quiet. Keanu spent most of his time restoring old motorcycles in his garage, while Sandra stayed home, avoiding interviews. The calm felt strange, like a pause before thunder. Both of them could sense something was coming, but neither wanted to speak it aloud. One afternoon, Sandra received a call from her agent. His voice sounded tense. "We've got a problem," he said. She frowned. "What kind of problem?" "A journalist claims to have an exclusive story about you and Keanu. They say they have private messages, photos, even recordings." Her heart sank. "That's not possible," she whispered. "We have nothing to hide." "It doesn't matter if it's true," her agent replied. "They just need people to believe it." Within hours, the headlines exploded again. Hidden truth behind Hollywood's quiet couple, private texts reveal real feelings, the story they didn't want you to know. Sandra sat on her couch, reading the false stories spread across her screen. They had taken small, harmless details and turned them into weapons. A picture of Keanu handing her a coffee cup was turned into a secret breakfast meeting. A video of them laughing on set became romantic tension caught live. Lies were easier to sell than truth. She felt her hands shaking as she called Keanu. "It's happening again," she said quietly. He was silent for a few seconds, then spoke gently. "Breathe, we'll get through it." "But what if this time it ruins everything?" she asked, her voice breaking. He paused. "Then we'll rebuild it." Together, the next day, paparazzi crowded outside their homes. Microphones waited by their cars, cameras flashed through windows. Both of them chose silence, refusing to respond or defend. But behind that silence was exhaustion. Late one night, Sandra drove to Keanu's place. When he opened the door, she looked lost, not sad, just tired. "I don't know how you stay calm through all this," she said softly. He gestured toward his small living room where a single candle flickered. "Because peace isn't out there," he said, pointing toward the world beyond the window. "It's in here. No one can take that from you unless you let them." She sat beside him on the floor, staring at the soft light. "How do you do it, Keanu? How do you stay kind when people keep misunderstanding you?" He smiled faintly. "Because every time I've seen hate, someone somewhere was quietly being kind. I just want to be that someone." His words settled in her heart. In that quiet moment, she realized what made him different, not fame, not success, but how he carried pain with grace. The next morning, Sandra made a bold decision. She called her agent and said, "Book an interview, but not with a gossip channel, with someone who listens." A few days later, she appeared on a respected talk show. Dressed simply without makeup or glamour, she looked into the camera and said, "Rumors are easy. Truth takes effort. Keanu Reeves is my friend, one of the kindest souls I've ever met. And if people can't understand friendship between a man and a woman without twisting it, maybe that says more about the world than it does about us." Her voice didn't tremble. It was steady, real, and honest. The host didn't interrupt. The audience sat in silence. For once, her words weren't followed by applause, just quiet respect. When the interview aired, the reaction surprised everyone. Instead of more gossip, thousands of fans started sharing stories about their own friendships, about kindness, about the need to believe in good people again. Keanu called her that night. "You spoke for both of us," he said softly. "I didn't plan to," she replied. "It just came from the heart." But even as peace began to return, a new challenge was rising quietly, one far away from Hollywood lights. Keanu had been secretly supporting a small foundation that helped orphans and cancer patients. Few people knew about it, not even Sandra. But one of the donors had recently betrayed that trust, using the foundation's name for personal profit. The news reached him a week later. His name was suddenly dragged into another storm, this time not for friendship, but for false accusations of charity fraud. It broke his heart. Not because people doubted him, but because something pure had been used to hurt others. Sandra rushed to see him when she heard. She found him sitting on his porch, staring into the distance, his hands folded. "You don't deserve this," she said quietly. "Maybe," he replied, "but the people who believed in that charity, they deserve the truth." And with that, he made a decision that would once again show the world who he really was, not through words, but through action. The truth that stood alone the morning air was heavy when Keanu Reeves walked into the press hall. Cameras waited like hunters, microphones pointed like arrows. He wasn't there to promote a movie or answer rumors about his friendship with Sandra. This time he came to speak about something far more important, truth. The charity scandal had spread fast. Headlines accused him of being careless, of letting others misuse the foundation's funds. Though the investigation wasn't over, people online had already chosen sides. Some believed him, many didn't. But Keanu, calm as always, didn't hire a team of lawyers or publicists to clean his image. Instead, he prepared his own quiet statement. When he stepped up to the podium, the flashes began. Reporters called his name, shouting questions. But when he started to speak, the room slowly fell silent. "This foundation was created to help children who fight every day for their lives," he said, his voice soft but steady. "And I'll keep helping them whether people believe in me or not. I don't care about my reputation. I care about the kids who need their next treatment." His honesty hit the room like a wave. No anger, no defense, just truth wrapped in humility. Sandra watched from the side of the stage, her eyes filled with quiet pride. She had seen many faces of fame in Hollywood, proud ones, fake ones, broken ones, but never one that stayed gentle even when surrounded by fire. After the conference, Keanu refused to disappear. Instead, he visited hospitals again, talking to families, funding operations, and spending time with children who smiled simply because he showed up. Reporters tried to follow him, but he often slipped away quietly, arriving through back doors or at midnight when the cameras were gone. Word slowly began to spread, not through tabloids, but through the stories of those he helped. One nurse posted online about how Keanu sat beside a young boy for 2 hours, helping him finish a drawing. Another doctor shared how Keanu donated anonymously to fix broken equipment. The truth started to rebuild itself, not through noise, but through whispers of kindness. Sandra, watching from afar, decided to join him quietly. She began using her influence to bring attention back to the foundation, helping them rebuild their name and trust. One evening, as they walked through the hospital together, A little girl ran up to them with a shy smile and handed Keanu a handmade card. It said, "Thank you for being kind even when it hurts." He looked at the words for a long time before speaking. "Maybe that's all we ever need to be remembered for," he said softly. Sandra smiled. "Not movies, not fame. Just kindness." The next few weeks changed everything. The real culprits behind the charity misuse were exposed, two former partners who had forged documents and stolen donations. Keanu was cleared completely. Yet he didn't celebrate. When reporters asked how he felt to be proven innocent, he simply said, "I wasn't trying to be proven right. I was trying to make things right." That single sentence spread across the internet, reaching millions. Fans, journalists, even critics began to see him differently, not as an actor avoiding controversy, but as a man standing quietly for what was right. But Hollywood being Hollywood, not everyone liked it. Some insiders thought his humility made others look bad. Offers started disappearing, roles postponed, calls unanswered. He was too real for an industry built on illusion. Sandra noticed it before he did. "They're pulling back," she warned him. "You're making them uncomfortable." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe they should be," she sighed. "You can't save everyone, Keanu." "Maybe not," he said. "But I can try to make their world softer, even for a moment." Those words stayed with her. A month later, the movie Quiet Hearts finally premiered. The world waited to see if the rumors, scandals, and silence had destroyed their magic. But when the lights dimmed and the film began, something happened that no one expected. People didn't see gossip. They saw humanity. The story, filled with forgiveness, loyalty, and compassion, touched audiences deeply. When the credits rolled, there was silence for a moment before the entire hall stood up and applauded. Some cried. Others just smiled quietly, as if reminded of something they'd forgotten, that good people still existed. Keanu and Sandra stood side by side, tears in their eyes. The applause wasn't for fame or performance. It was for truth that had survived noise. After the show, a reporter asked them, "How did you manage to stay strong through everything?" Sandra looked at Keanu, then answered softly, "By not fighting the storm. By being the calm." That night, as they walked out into the cool air, both felt lighter. They had been through fire and came out cleaner, not burned. But the journey wasn't over. Because just when peace seemed to return, a letter arrived at Keanu's doorstep, handwritten, no return name, no address. Inside, there were a few words that would change everything again. "You once helped me when I was no one. It's time I returned the kindness." The message had no clue who it was from, but Keanu recognized the handwriting from years ago, a child he had met in a hospital long before. And suddenly, the past he had quietly built with kindness was about to bring a miracle back into his life. The circle of kindness. Keanu sat on his porch that night, the cool wind brushing softly against his face. The letter lay open in his hands, its words simple but powerful. He read them again and again. "You once helped me when I was no one. It's time I returned the kindness." Memories flooded back. Years ago, in a small children's hospital far from Los Angeles, he had met a little boy named Liam. Liam was 8, thin and pale from chemotherapy, but his eyes were full of life. Keanu had been visiting the hospital quietly back then, bringing books and art supplies. Liam loved to draw, and one afternoon, Keanu had sat beside him for hours, helping him color a picture of a motorcycle under the sun. When Keanu was about to leave, Liam had said, "When I grow up, I'll do what you do. I'll help people too." He never forgot those words. Now, years later, this letter felt like Liam's voice echoing across time. The next morning, Keanu showed the letter to Sandra. She looked at it with quiet wonder. "Do you think it's really him?" she asked. "I don't know," Keanu replied. "But if it is, I need to find him." After days of searching, they found him, not the sick little boy Keanu once knew, but a grown man in his 20s, healthy, smiling, and running a small community center for underprivileged kids in a small town outside San Diego. When Keanu and Sandra arrived, Liam was teaching children how to paint. The moment he saw Keanu, he froze for a second, then his eyes filled with tears. "You came," he whispered. Keanu smiled softly. "You sent the letter." Liam nodded, his voice trembling. "You once told me that kindness never breaks. I believed you, and when I got better, I decided to build this place for kids who need the same hope I once did." As Keanu and Sandra walked through the small building, they saw walls covered with drawings, each one signed by a child. Laughter echoed through the rooms and sunlight spilled through the windows. It was pure. It was real. Liam showed them a photo pinned on the wall, an old picture of him and Keanu at the hospital. Below it, he had written a line, "Because one act of kindness can outlive a lifetime of fame." Keanu stared at it silently, emotion filling his chest. He turned to Liam. "You didn't need to return anything," he said softly. Liam smiled. "Maybe not. But I wanted you to see that your kindness didn't disappear. It grew." Sandra, standing nearby, wiped away tears. This is what the world should talk about," she whispered. "Not rumors, not drama." That evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the three of them sat outside the community center, watching the children play. One of the kids ran up and asked Keanu, "Are you the man in the picture?" He nodded gently. "Yes, but he's the real hero now," he said, pointing to Liam. The little girl smiled. "You're both heroes." They laughed softly, and in that laughter, the noise of the world disappeared. Weeks later, a journalist somehow found out about the meeting and asked Keanu if it was true. For once, he didn't hide it. He simply said, "Kindness comes back in ways you can't imagine. I helped a boy once. Now he's helping hundreds. That's the real story." The article that followed didn't twist his words. It didn't invent rumors. It just told the truth. It spoke about how fame fades, but compassion echoes. It spread everywhere, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. People began to see Keanu and Sandra in a new light. They weren't just actors anymore. They were reminders that goodness still exists quietly in the corners of a loud world. Months passed, and Quiet Hearts won several awards. During the ceremony, when Keanu's name was called, the entire hall stood and clapped. But he didn't walk to the stage alone. He asked Liam and Sandra to join him. Together, they accepted the award not for the film, but for the truth it carried. Standing under the bright lights, Keanu spoke one last time. "People will forget our movies. They'll forget the headlines, the gossip, the noise. But if they remember even one small act of kindness, then we've done something that lasts." Sandra placed her hand on his arm, eyes shining. Liam smiled proudly beside them. The applause that followed wasn't just for fame, it was for everything they stood for. After the ceremony, as they stepped outside into the quiet night, Sandra looked at him and said softly, "You were right, Keanu. Kindness really never breaks." He looked up at the stars, his expression calm and peaceful. "No," he whispered, "it just keeps moving from one heart to another." The camera lights faded, the crowd dispersed, and the world moved on. But somewhere in a small town where laughter filled painted walls, kindness continued, silent, strong, and endless. Because the real story behind Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock's rumors was never about love or fame. It was about something far greater, the quiet power of goodness that survives everything.